Car, you're with Julian on the Brown Notes, and a review of one of the most important films of the year, Alex Garland's Civil War, and the most disappointed I've been by a film in a very long time. Alex Garland began with a pivotal novel in my life, The Beach, which was then destroyed by his longtime collaborator Danny Boyle. One of the most mercurial directors in all of cinema, turned into an absolute disaster of a film. But the book itself completely embodied a certain era of, I guess, British backpackers coming to Australia and spending a month in Thailand and going to the full moon party and ending up off the beaten track and so on. But he's actually turned to film more than novel writing, and a number of screenplays with Danny Boyle after that, 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. The movie Sunshine as well, which, you know, it could be one of the great all-time science fiction films, but Danny Boyle had to put that tiny bit on the end, which spoilt it. I don't know what Never Let Me Go is, but I thought when he started directing, I thought Ex Machina, it's a film I'll argue with people online about. I think it's terribly overrated. Whatever the ideas involved are, it just isn't that great. I thought Annihilation was an absolute masterpiece. I think it was my second favourite film of that year. I thought that was brilliant. And I didn't see Men, the last one, but Civil War's come out in the year that everyone expects America to have a civil war due to Donald Trump, and everyone is watching in bewilderment how anyone is letting it happen and seemingly just nudging further closer to this finish line where it will actually happen, which for me is whichever way round. If Trump loses, then his supporters cause a civil war. If Trump wins, then his opponents will react to the draconian measures he's openly saying that he will enact, and so on. So I would expect an awful lot from this film, and I was incredibly let down. It stars Kristen Dunst as a war journalist and her travelling. So the America that's presented is that Texas and California have joined together. People are moaning about this element to fight the government. And people moan about this element saying Texas and California wouldn't join together. I thought that was the one element of actual genius in the film, because it didn't allow either side to get off the hook. They chose two opponents to actually join together against this totalitarian president. But it does make the decision that the president is more like Trump than anyone else, because they're saying about how totalitarian this guy is, and he's openly being that way with his plans for his next presidency. And she's a war journalist, and she is going to travel from where she is across America to visit with the president and ask him questions and get the first interview out of him in the period that the Civil War's been going on. The number one problem this film has is it doesn't ask its baseline question or engage with it at all. It is one of dozens of films about war journalists that I have seen in my life, particularly war journalists that take photos from the killing fields on. I have seen so many films that are about war journalists, and this could have been filmed any year in any country that has a conflict. It doesn't engage with its main source at all, and that is a crucial failing. But combined with its secondary massive failing, which is the writing is terrible and the characters are terrible, that is an absolute fail. There's Kristen Dunst is fantastic as the main protagonist, a war journalist who's seen it all and so on. She's great. She's awesome. And she's an underrated actress because she never even got an Oscar nomination for Melancholia, which was my second favourite film of the last decade, and a masterpiece of a performance. Completely unheralded as an actress, and she is fantastic here. Everyone else isn't. I thought Wagner Moura, who played Pablo in the Narcos series, was okay, but Some of the others are terrible. Like Kaylee Spaney, who is so she basically occupies the role of the main story arc. And the main story arc is she's a young photojournalist who is a bit upset about photographing dead people at the start and a bit more okay with it at the end. And that's pretty much the story arc of the film. It has no relevance or contact with anything else. I don't understand why they didn't actually... If they're going to make a film about a civil war, why they would have shut every aspect that connected it with the modern world off. She's very amateurish in her acting, and the writing is poor, as it is for Stephen McKinley Henderson, who is like a veteran journalist. Like him and the young'un are so hokey in their characterizations and so thinly written that it's almost cringe-inducing. The only high points are the fact that the cinematography is quite good, and the music by Ben Salisbury and Jeff Barrow from Portishead is actually very good. So there's some of the cinematography and the music is exceptional, and so is Kristen Dunst, but everything else is poor. Including writing, including the screenplay, including the characters, including the whole connection with Civil War in America today. I just don't understand why this film exists. It feels like watching a subpart episode of The Last of Us or some zombie movie where they move across America and cars are burnt out and they encounter the odd thing along the way. None of those things matter or present any sort of learning or intrigue or poetic comment. It's garbage. The one scene that's been pulled out online a lot, which is the one with arguably the best performer of a sociopath currently working today, which is Jesse Plemons. That scene is the one classic scene in the whole film, where he encounters them and sort of, they're like, we're Americans. Okay, what kind of Americans? That's a great scene. It's one great scene. And it is followed by the best period of the film from an enjoyment angle, which is a long battle sequence, which is very well shot. His scene is ruined by an unbelievably stupid end to what is an incredibly tense scene, worthy of The Last of Us. The only scene in the whole thing worthy of that season of TV. They try to ruin it with this ridiculous end, but it's still a great scene. And after that, you do get sort of half an hour of the battle sequence into the White House, which is actually well shot, but completely meaningless, and ending with the denouement between the Kristen Dunst character and the Kaylee Spaney character, which I predicted so heavily in my head that I was actually praying that they wouldn't do it, and they did it in exactly the same way. It is a film that's void of meaning, scared of engaging with its subject matter, badly written, thinly plotted. I think people are giving it acclaim. Critics are the worst. If they don't understand something, like the right wing will say it's terrible because they don't understand anything that isn't direct and straightforward. But the mainstream of critics are saying that it's a really good film and an important film. But that's because they don't really understand it. And I understand it, and it is just a very poorly written film that doesn't engage with its main point at all, and could have been about any photojournalist in any war in the last 40 years. And comparing it to something like Salvador with James Woods, him being like this photojournalist in El Salvador, or a film like that, it's like absolutely weak tea. So really, given Alex Garland has made a film like Annihilation, which is an absolute fantastic film, and even Ex Machina, this is so much below Ex Machina, definitely the most disappointed I've been. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 for some well-shot visual battle sequences, but nothing at all to do with a civil war.